Hello, my friends and my brothers. This is Justin Jones with Masonic Improvement. I'm joined here this evening with my fantastic co-host, Kenneth Yates.
So, just so everybody knows, this is all of our inner circle members, and these members are the ones that support Masonic Improvement day in and day out, and we are grateful for all the support, and we love you all. I would like to introduce Chris Williams. Both of these guys, the only reason I talk like this to them is because they are my mentors. And whenever you see me doing something really great, it's because of them. But every time I do something really bad, it's because they didn't get to me in time. So just remember that. These are my life support, and I love them. We also have Brother Charles Smith from up in the Lubbock area, as well as Jason Reichenberg, Oscar Cordova, Scott Bratson, and Gene Sanchez. And last but not least, I'd like to introduce a brother who we all truly love and adore. We really like to fellowship with this brother and speak masonry with this brother because he is so knowledgeable in all things Masonic, but even more knowledgeable about the goings on at Grand Lodge. Without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Craig Enderley. How are you, brother?
Yeah, appreciate y'all having me on.
Thank you for coming.
It is always a pleasure to have the opportunity to speak with Craig Enderley.
Thanks.
Absolutely, absolutely. Before we start this journey tonight, this is our resolution podcast, and we are doing this specifically to talk about the resolutions coming before Texas and Grand Lodge to vote on this year. One of the most important things we can do is express our love for our fraternity by making sure some laws get in and others stay the hell out. So we are going to discuss all of our resolutions today. Now I'm going to be a little bit more open-minded. I'll let the brothers speak on what they want. But before we do this, Craig, it's my understanding that you were extremely instrumental in making sure that our voting process is secure, our digital voting process is secure, and I'd like to hear a little bit about how that came about, because a lot of us don't really know the story behind voting registration and voting, and also the security of Grand Lodge in general when we're recording and doing our business at the same time. Would you mind explaining a little bit of that to us?
Yeah, sure. Really, this all came about as a result of the pandemic, of course. So in 2020, there were a lot of questions that came about specifically from the Grand Master, Paul Underwood at the time, about how we were going to securely conduct elections. And so I'll kind of, everyone knows really the story about evolving over to a broadcasted version because of the reason of COVID. But I'm going to just really talk about the election process. We had to develop on the election process two factors. One was how we're going to allow the people on site to continue to securely vote, and then how are the people that are off site to securely vote. So in the offsite, we decided that the way we had to secure it was with some way in which we could have a two-factor authentication, that the person registering and the person voting were synced up with the time of election. And so we did that using a notification that came however they wanted it to, either phone or verbally. They heard it through the annual communication. They logged in with their credentials, and then they could vote. And then, because of some last minute changes, we took the two and we merged those two together. And as part of that process, one of the questions that not just me, but many people of the special committee that was formed in 2020 had was, how are we going to certify the vote? Because it is not, it's of the opinion of the Internet Committee and the Audiovisual Committee that it is not our job to to certify the results of a vote. We are merely there to help conduct it, set up, to ensure that it's secure, and consult on those matters with the trustees. But the actual implementation and the certification must come from someone else. And so our recommendation to the Grand Master is that it be the Credentials Committee's job, which Credentials does agree with us that it is their job to certify that vote was done correctly underneath the orders of the Grand Master. And so that was part of the process that we set into place, that anytime we took a vote, we required that a minimum of one member selected by the chairman of Credentials was in the room during voting, and that while voting was in progress, one member must be watching over one of the audiovisual or internet committee members who is conducting the electronic transfer of votes. This is merely like oversight. So this is like an election judge at the polling place, right? So you have a technician who is standing off in the corner and you never see them. And then you see the election judge. They're the ones you're greeting, and they're handing you the ticket and getting you set up. And if you have any questions, you're talking to them. We're pretty much the same way. After we did that in 2020, we had some conversations that went back and forth that said, maybe prior to 2020, maybe we didn't have oversight proper, because there was not really any oversight. No one was watching enough. There wasn't one committee doing it and one committee watching. And so we decided that as long as that we're involved in the process, that we're going to require oversight of another committee, it being Credentials, and it's worked out so far. There was, prior to the last trustees meeting, there was a bit of discussion that was brought back up in regards to the sanctity of the ballot. And there was some confusion just because some trustees were unaware of what the process is in regards to this, how there was oversight and how that instrumentally worked. They were briefed on how it works, but there became some concerns on the opposite side of the table as a result of the conversation. So we have elected to not participate in the program this year, and the trustees are bringing in an outside group, Grandview. They're going to bring their own personnel, and they're going to act as our proxies, just to disconnect us from the process for this year. There'll still be that oversight as far as we understand. They'll still be in the room with us. It's just they'll be operating the equipment instead of us, and then Credentials will be in the room when all the voting happens as well. So there's actually been another layer of protection, that now the people who are running the voting devices will not be Masons who are allowed to vote in the state of Texas.
Interesting.
Wow.
What brought that on, though? I mean, golly, you would think that being brothers, being Masons, that you wouldn't have to, bring in somebody from the outside to monitor our behavior. That was the internet committee chose that, or was that a trustee?
No, we did not choose that. That was chosen for us. But we did say at one point during the process that we no longer wanted to be involved in the process if discussions were going to continue down the route that they were going. And so, as we all know, it's no big Masonic secret that there's some turbulence in the Grand Lodge politics, and it reaches every facet, no matter what you try to do.
Oh, am I just hearing about this? Are the Grandview guys? I assume guys, are they Masons, or is it like an independent company? They're all Masons. Okay.
Well, not everyone in the company of Grandview are Masons that I'm aware of. I know that there is a lady programmer who works for that corporation, and so I don't know whether she's a Mason or not. But the Masons that they are bringing will be Masons that are qualified and who have previously sat in our proceedings.
Okay. Yeah, because they would have to be Masons technically to sit in there, wouldn't they?
Yes,
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there will be Masons that will be operating the equipment. I would be telling you if I knew otherwise.
So
Right.
you said that this was implemented in 2020 as far as the
the process of oversight was implemented in 2020. We made I was the chairman of a special committee that was assigned for devising how the operational side of the grand annual communication of 2021 would occur in all facets, voting, contingencies for who could attend, who couldn't. We had all kinds of mandates that were in place from McKinnon County. And anyways, we wrote multiple reports, and the Grandmaster, of course, COVID evolved, regulations evolved in the county and in the state, and so we ended up where we ended up is probably the best place we could have ended up, where we didn't have a capacity limit, and therefore we didn't have any in-house restrictions, and we allowed people to stay home and participate in.
Dennis, did you have anything else you wanted to ask, or does anyone have anything else they want to ask before we move forward?
I have two other things I just want to mention about. I have got a couple of questions on regard to, have I ever seen the procedural requirements published in front of the rules and regulations? And I believe I have seen that before. But those procedural rules vary from time to time by a Grandmaster. As a matter of fact, I compared these specific rules and regulations to Terry Stogner's that were for the 2020 Grand Annual Communication. And I also looked at it against 21, which would have been Paul's. And I did notice that there are some items that are left off, and some items that are tweaked a little bit, but pretty much the premise is exactly the same. And all of those rules pretty much stem to from a pre 1910 version of the Constitution. There were about 14 sections in the Constitution that basically gave the governance, of how business should be transacted in the Grand Lodge of Texas. I think the article, I think the chapter in all had like 16 sections or 17, stuff like that, but only 14 are really germane to the subject of what we're talking about here. There's one in particular that I absolutely love to read, which was Section 8. Whoever shall be so rude as to hiss or laugh at any brother shall be forthwith excluded from the communication and be incapable of membership until he has made a satisfactory apology. For whatever reason, after 1919, they took that one out. And on a side note, why do I know that? It's because after this last Grand Annual Communication, I looked up the word hiss, because I had never heard anyone ever hiss in the Grand Lodge of Texas before, and wondered if it was ever showed up in the proceedings, and that's how I found
it. That is funny.
Yeah, I like that. So I never noticed. So I guess it's normal for these procedural rules to be in front of the resolutions every year.
I have seen them. I have seen them from time to time, but it is not as standardized.
Yeah, I never noticed it before this year, but I didn't really. I figured that everybody probably knows it's going to be a pretty busy Grand Lodge, so that's why I assumed that they put those in there. But yeah, that makes sense too.
if you go back and look at podium, well, you can't go back and look at podiums. If you look in the proceedings, you will see that these procedural items that are here, they are read every year.
I see.
Usually, Bob Glasgow, who just passed away, he's usually gets up there and he reads them, before we start. People sometimes just don't take notice of them.
Okay, that's fair. Okay, well, with that said,
What's interesting,
go ahead.
what's just real quick, what's interesting is that if we as brothers were to actually practice these types of procedures in our own lodges like we're supposed to, then this wouldn't even be a discussion. Everybody would already know the rules of conduct and how to handle themselves within a debate scenario.
That's very true. All right. We are going to move on to the proposed resolutions for the 2024 Grand Lodge of Texas communication. I want to say a few things before we get started. First and foremost, and probably the most important, is that this is simply the views and opinions of the participants here that are collected. This is by no means a reflection of our lodges or any Grand Lodges that we may be associated with. It's not politicking by any means. We're not trying to change anybody's mind about anything. We are just here discussing our thoughts and our opinions, and we're going from there. I'm going to summarize these resolutions. I'm going to assume that everyone watching and participating has a copy of the PDF or a hard copy of the resolutions. So I'm going to summarize pretty heavily, unless it's just necessary to mention some specifics verbiage to really emphasize the point. Resolution number 1, and I'm just going to jump straight to the last, therefore be it resolved on as many of these as I can. So resolution number 1, therefore be it resolved that a special committee be appointed by the Grand Master to develop the adoption at the next Grand Lodge annual communication, a program designed to implement an all the way in a day program.
Oh, hell no.
So if you take the time to read all the whereas and all the justifications that the authors give for this resolution, it really echoes what I've always said, is that you have a generation of brothers, and I don't know the age of these brothers, but I'll just say you have a generation of Masons that make a lot of assumptions about what younger generations want without actually asking them or getting kind of feedback on it. And this is what that feels like to me. I would say that this resolution, if passed, would put in motion a program that is the complete polar opposite of what the most successful lodges in Texas are doing. And that's not my opinion. That's based off we've had many people on here that have given their own thoughts, and that's what their successful lodges are doing also. They slowed down the process. So this is the opposite direction. This is, let's just streamline everything, get as many people as we can, but that's not what shows to be the most successful and the most highly successful lodges.
Go ahead, Chris.
Go ahead.
I just want to say that it is, and I base this on the years on the Education and Service Committee, and Brad may or may not back me up on this, but it is my experience that him trying to base these whereases on what the young men want and what their opinions are is total bullcrap, because that's not what they want. My experience is the young men do not want this all the way in one day. They want everything that we got and more. And I don't know where this guy gets this, but it's totally false, in my opinion.
I didn't really understand how they said from last year's Grand Lodge session, it was, basically identified that this was something that I'm paraphrasing. In fact, I'm not even paraphrasing. I'm just making up my own words. But that's basically one of the whereases, is that in Grand Lodge, it was decided that young Masons just don't want to put in the work. And that just blows my mind, because everything that we've learned talking with our guests and different authors, we've learned that in different brothers, we connect with so many non-Masons in our footprint that I'm sorry, but we are somewhat of subject material experts from the field, right? And these brothers or these young men are looking for, or young Masons, not just young men, but they're looking for those rites of passage they didn't get as a teenager, because everybody got a participation award, right? I'm okay, you're okay. And then these guys are growing up on the internet and seeing that there are so many mysteries out there, but they don't really know what's right or wrong. So they want to go to the source. They want to learn. They want that education. They're looking for the rites of passage, the education, and the the master apprentice relationship that you can only get through Freemasonry.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to echo what Chris and Dennis are saying. I don't know where they went to conduct their marketing research, but they certainly didn't go to the people that they're talking about to ask what they wanted out of Freemasonry. Because if they had, they certainly wouldn't have gotten an answer like, well, I want to be made a master in a single day and not have to do any of the work that you guys put in.
Mhm.
These guys want what their grandparents had. I mean, their lives have been made so convenient that they're looking for some sort of an organization that provides a modicum of truth. And we're the perfect organization to carry that banner. And if we're just going to cheapen everything and let anybody and everybody that wants to be a Mason join for the sheer purpose of collecting dues to pay for these obsolete buildings, then we're really missing the boat on what we were formed for. I mean, this resolution it gets under my skin. So I'll leave it at that.
Most of what I'm hearing so far, I gotta agree with. I gotta tell you, I never was asked whenever I joined. I've been hearing these same things since I've joined, and that's been about 15 years ago. I've never been asked really what I came to Masonry for, and I've heard a lot of these things just, oh, these young guys want these young guys want that. No, young guys, myself included at the time, they wanted Freemasonry. And there's so many people out there that don't even know what Freemasonry actually is.
Mhm.
Now, aside from all that, if we get down to it in the analytical sense, I want to pitch this question to you guys. And some of you might even have an answer. Is there any analytical, and I'm talking about hard fact data that we can produce that shows in other grand jurisdictions that do this, that it is a success? And what I mean by that is, how many come in through this type of program? How many stay active? How many end up demitting? How many end up going NPD? We don't really have any data that shows that, to my knowledge. And if we do, I'd love to see it. I want to say maybe Brother Ruark with Masonic Roundtable has discussed it a few times on there, I think. But to my knowledge, I don't think there's really any hard data to show that this type of program actually works.
Mhm.
Now, I'll tell you this, I know in other grand jurisdictions, there have been some good Masons that came out of it. For example, my mentor, my instructor, he was from Illinois. He went through a one-day class back in the day.
Mhm.
And he's active, and he's, past master Saul Ross and past master Brad's Union. And he was my instructor, and he continues to be. But we don't really have any hard data to show all those things I've said. Plus, how many of them are just doing it because they want to be they just want to be a master mason only. That's it. Are they joining for political reasons? Well, what's the motive behind them joining, but they don't want to take the time to go through? We got to ask these questions. So that's what I've got on the subject. And if there is any evidence of it, I'd love to hear it.
Really, to your question about the data, how do you quantify that and how do you measure that? Really, is what it comes down to me. I've heard, I haven't seen the data, but I've heard the retention is about the same as your traditional route. But how do you measure retention? Is it showing up once a month, or I don't know. But I would also point out my personal opinion. I don't care how the data compares, me personally, because one is ideally geared towards making Freemasons, and the other is designed with the intent of creating members. And I know what I want in my organization. I want Freemasons. And so me personally, I don't care if the data shows that you have 100% retention if you do 1-day classes. I don't care. Yes, you do have good Masons that come out of it, but it's the equivalent of throwing mud at the wall and see what sticks, I think. Yes, you'll get good Masons out of it by sheer quantity of new members. You're bound to get good Masons out of it, but you're also creating a lot of Masons in name only. As Brother Williams has pointed out, I mean, you got Masons, you got Freemasons, you got members. This is geared towards creating members. As far as the whereases go, saying that young men don't have time, that they don't want to spend all this focus on this, they're too busy to go the traditional route, yada, yada, yada. If someone is too busy, I don't care their age, if they're too busy to go through the degrees, if they're too busy to learn the work, then they're going to be too busy to come to your stated meetings and help with your degrees and be a contributing member of the lodge. Right? They're not in a point in their life when they can give Freemasonry everything it's going to give them. So it's not a good time for them anyway.
Hello, brothers. Well, I can talk from my experience since I am a fellow craft mason. And maybe in the next state of meeting, I will be doing my fellow craft proficiency work. So hopefully I will be a master mason soon. But talking about my experience, going back to that, I would say that the rite of passage is really important, like Dennis was talking about, because I would compare it with the army. When you join the army, you go through a process to go and pass from a civilian recruit, and then you became a soldier. So it takes you time, effort, and at the end you value it more when you're putting in your time, your effort to learn something and go through the process. At the end, you value it more. That's what I believe.
I don't actually think that this is really towards the memberships. I believe that this is a way for individual lodges to cop out from doing degrees, because
I was just fixing
now,
to say that. Dang it.
now you're doing a 1-day class where you're sending your members out to actually do over there instead of actually doing it at your lodge.
Yes, and that's exactly what I was going to say. That it's just like with the York Rite, where we have one lodge that can do all the work, and you have a radius of 500 miles that everybody packs into this one lodge to get the degrees, and then goes back 500 miles out and never does anything else with the York Rite bodies.
Very nice. I'll point out before we move on that Brother Reichenberg made a comment. He just said in the chat a little bit ago that maybe this resolution was designed with the intent to not be successful, more to make a statement, which is very possible. Resolution number 2, and I'm going to summarize this as best I can. Basically, what it's going to do, as far as the voting process, is it will change so that it's no longer 3 or more to reject somebody. It has to be a majority of votes in protest. So lodges will have to learn how to do math finally.
As a percentage, yeah.
As a percentage, yeah. And this also applies to protest.
As you know, I have moved to Arkansas and gotten involved in masonry up here. They still have one blackball, rejects. So I think we're already pretty liberal in our acceptance of people who have applied for the mysteries of Freemasonry by only weeding out those with 3 or more black balls. I don't know that we need to go to a simple majority. I think that's a little ridiculous. This is one of those resolutions that will probably get pulled before anybody votes on it, thankfully.
Well,
I agree.
I'll say, first and foremost, Brother Kohanke, you can no longer petition for the mysteries of Freemasonry here in Texas. So
I will always call them the mysteries of Freemasonry, not the degrees of Freemasonry, regardless of who changed that petition.
But I'll also say, yeah, I agree. Personally, I like the one cube. I think that was, I think it worked for us for a very long time, and then we started worrying about. Well, anyway, I like that. But I'll say this, and I don't really have a lot of thoughts on it, but I'll tell you my experience in Freemasonry, and I love all my brothers, but a lot of Masons are bad at doing math. Look at the lodge finances in most lodges. We can't do math. We're pretty bad across the board. And now you're going to ask us on the fly to calculate the percentages of the votes based on the people there. It's not going to be pretty. It's not going to go well. It takes a process. You take a voting process that a lot of lodges are already kind of clunky with, and now you're saying do math as you do it. Yeah, spreadsheets. Yeah, you do spreadsheets, Jason, but you got to throw math at them while they're already struggling to do the process. So I don't see the value in it. I think, like, I'll echo what Bradley said. It takes something that's already far too lenient and makes it, I mean, almost, I mean, really, why even have the process at that point?
I just want to say that on the surface of it, it's absolutely ridiculous. Do you want to be a guy who was voted into the lodge by 2 votes? Half the lodge does not want you there, and the other half does. That's a bad situation right there. You know, it creates a lot of dissension between factions in the lodge. But, you know, one of the reasons why we went to 3 black cubes from 1, Tommy Griffin always told a story in the officer leadership that there was a lodge. Well, and first of all, there's a lot of guys out there still to this day that believe that you should not even be allowed to become a Mason until you've asked and been turned down 2 times. I mean, they have that mindset, and they're still about it. That's part of the reason why we went to 3 black cubes. Another reason was Tommy told a story about a guy who rejected a young man for membership in the lodge, and the kid came back the next year and he rejected him again. They didn't know at first who it was, but then they started getting a feeling that they knew it was this one guy. So a couple of the brothers took him outside after the meeting and asked him why the heck he was blackballing the kid, and he told him, he says, well, he dated my daughter one time and he brought her home 10 minutes after the curfew, and that's why he was blackballing him. And one of the brothers said, John, did you ever think maybe it was her fault and not his? And the story goes that he went ahead and let him come through. But that, you know, that the idea that one person with a bad attitude or whatever can control a man's Masonic future, you know, is kind of touchy. But 3, if there are 3 that are convinced that this is a bad guy, he shouldn't be in our lodge, you know. And so a simple majority is ridiculous. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. You got everybody in there, some want him, some don't. I wouldn't want to be in that situation, but this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
As you were talking about it, I was thinking, I'm thinking about the oversight that Craig had mentioned earlier, and I'm thinking, what's the oversight in the lodge? So one guy has both of his shoes off and his fingers out, and then you've got another guy back behind him with the little bean counter thing going, trying to figure out what the percentage is. Anyways, I mean, I veered off. I'm sorry.
So and you can close your ears, Dennis, if you'd like. But the Elks used to do this same thing. They had a very, very similar thing. However, so what happened? One of the reasons why they went to a simple majority as opposed to just a few, and I believe it was actually 3 black balls. I think they actually had a very similar voting system. Is when they in 1995 when they went co-ed, there were several lodges around the country that there was a certain segment that were simply never going to allow women to join, and they would vote continuously all the time, and it went on for several years, and Grand Lodge finally had to step in. Now, rightly or wrongly, whether they should have gone co-ed or not, I mean, that's a different thing. My thought would be, what would be the kind of the reason behind this? And some of they do make the point that, you get, 2 or 3, 3 guys in there who decide that, maybe they don't like Hispanic people, and they're never going to allow a Hispanic guy to join. They're never going to allow an African American to join, or something like that. And so I don't know if that's the fundamental reason behind why they would try and do something like that. I have not heard any problems so far as to how we've been doing voting, as to whether that has been an issue. But I kind of wonder if what it is that the motivation behind that, behind putting something like this together. So that was only my thoughts. I'm on the fence on this one. I've seen it work both ways. I've seen it work well both ways. It does prevent, just a small group of guys who just will not allow certain people to come in. I don't know. That was kind of my thoughts on it.
Wanted to add on to something Jason was saying just now. I know that that in 1984 this was a Grandmaster's recommendation that moved us from 3 to 1, and you can see that prior to that there are all these problems that are exactly what he's talking about. You can see all these problems, all these questions that are coming in that all have to do with voting. And so obviously I think that Grandmaster Bob Waters at the time, it was the reason why he made that recommendation, is he saw this wave of all these issues. Now he referred it to committee, to jurisprudence. I think it took him like 4 years before it turned into law. But then like the next year, it had to have become a national issue for some reason, because the Conference of Grandmasters then discussed it in 1989. And so there must have been this movement across the United States where everyone was having this surge of problems. So kind of with Jason on this, I'm not sure I've seen a surge in issue with the 3 ball, that needs us to move to the next. I don't have a problem really moving up to the next level if we had a real problem, but I just haven't seen it become an issue like Jason was referring to, that it had something to do with race, or it had something to do with religious beliefs. And I could see why we would need to move it to negate those issues. But outside of that, I don't see a reason why.
I agree. That's my sentiment as well.
Good. We'll look at number 3 here. Yeah, why don't you explain that one, Dennis? Because you were talking to me about that the other day. Can you summarize that pretty well?
Yeah. If you go to trial over certain circumstances, if you find resolve before the actual trial process, or you are found not guilty of the offense, someone can't come in later, hit you with the exact same charge. And I'll tell you exactly where this stems from. Is that last year when prior to our grand annual communication, there were charges filed against someone, and then immediately following or during installation, the exact same thing was brought up against that same person. And that shouldn't be. If it's decided by a grand master or by a jury of your peers that you are not guilty or have not caused enough harm to actually kick you out of Freemasonry, then you should not be able to be brought up on those same charges again. That's basically what this law is all about. And
I think this is real easy. It's a double jeopardy clause, just like the Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. It prevents anybody from being prosecuted twice on the same crime. It doesn't. This is just a Masonic crime, and so I think this is real simple, real easy.
Moving on. So this was actually really short. So I'm gonna read a lot of it, but I'm gonna still summarize it. So whereas this is number 4, whereas there's no provision for a special session of the Grand Lodge of Texas other than called by the Grand Master, yada yada, therefore be it resolved that there shall be amendments as follows. Section 3, Part B is the only one that really has a change through this. And it says special communications of the Grand Lodge shall be conveyed. It used to say may be convened, but now it says shall be convened within 90 days. Whenever the Grand Master, presiding officer, it used to say or presiding officer, but now it says presiding officer of the time, majority vote of the trustees, or upon the written request of 50 constituent lodges. I can't talk today. I'm sorry.
Constituted.
Constituent.
Oh,
there.
Okay.
I couldn't get it out. To the Grand Secretary shall deem that the interest of the craft require. So it's basically giving. It sounds the way I'm perceiving it is giving the Grand West a little bit more power to call special communications. Is that sound right, or does anyone have?
Yeah, it's like a convention of states, only within Grand Lodge.
I see. Okay. Well, I like anything that gives the Grand West more power, more flexibility.
Amen to that.
Are there any other thoughts?
I think that people probably perceived that the power was there initially just because of that last portion between the two commas, shall deem that the interests of the craft require. And so, but it gave them no way to act on it if they did require. And I think this gives them a way to act if the Grand Master does not see that the craft required it. It's good.
I agree. That what a lot of people don't realize is that when the Grand Master, or I should say the trustees, make decisions for the Grand West when not in session. So when we're in session, it's all up to us. Democracy prevails, right? But as soon as that gavel drops and we are no longer in session, then it immediately becomes the trustees' decisions on what's going to happen in any given matter. So this actually, and we have no way of forcing their hand as the Grand West to say, hey, we want it brought to light within all of our lodges. This should be a lodge vote. This should be a Grand West vote. This should not be a Grand Master vote. So this would enable us to, if we had enough lodges that constituent lodges, I used it right that time. If we had enough constituent lodges petition to do this, then they would have to call a grand session within 90 days. And I think that is absolutely where we should have always been, being that the Grand West is supposed to be the ones represented. If we are to represent ourselves, I don't think there's any one person that would be able to make that decision for me.
We are looking at resolution number 5. Therefore be resolved that Article 47A shall be deleted in its entirety. And it looks like it removes the responsibility of the Grand Secretary for the management of the Grand Lodge building.
I think this is another easy one. This is a cleanup of a corporate decision that was made before Justin's time. He's the one that recommended this one, I believe.
I agree.
And Don Paul Payton, of course. This is just a cleanup. The Library and Museum and the Grand Lodge of Texas are two separate corporate entities. They need to be separated all the way. This is another item that's clearly needs to be separated, and it just wasn't done before. So needs to be taken care of.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I'm just,
They've already hired a building manager, so Justin being in charge too is a conflict of interest anyway. So
Let's see.
I gotta tell you, brothers, this just gets me giddy. Just saying that something needs to be deleted in its entirety from the law book. I'm just so excited. I got so happy when I saw it.
Makes the law book go from this thick to that thick. You
Right.
know. Making progress, boys.
Yeah.
Add
Great.
7, delete 1.
There you go.
Yes.
Okay. Resolution number 6. The short and sweet of this is that it would allow you to actually post your minutes. They can be put on the secretary's desk for people to look at.
I'm as a secretary. I mean, I'm perfectly fine with it. Although I wish they'd pick a different location so that people run to my desk before the
Maybe
meeting.
get a bigger desk.
Right.
Yeah, but no. Other than that, I mean, there's no reason. I have no desire to speak or read any more than I already do at a meeting. So eliminating this requirement, I mean, that probably I go through them pretty fast. If anybody's ever heard me read them, but you know, a lot of guys
Not fast enough.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. I mean, some guys do. Some guys, it takes them 5, 10, 15 minutes to get through them, especially if you have called meetings in between. I mean, it can take up 20, 30 minutes of the meeting
Yeah.
the beginning. So anything to get that part down and move on and actually get to some actual important stuff is fine with me.
I'll tell you one thing, being a former secretary, there was not much that really irritated me than having a bunch of people standing around my desk when I'm trying to get ready for a meeting. I mean, that would just grind my gears. But, however, what I am going to say is I do like the idea that this is coming up. A lot of people don't understand that you can get an abbreviated version of minutes, such as a called meeting for a degree. Hey, we opened at 7:20. We did the degree. We closed at 8:30. Done. If you want any more details, see me after the meeting. Kind of same thing this does, but you don't have to really go through all that. Here it is. And I want to, kind of go a little bit further over this, but really I'd be curious to see opposition to it, tell you the truth, because I think everybody is of the favor, like, yeah, let's go ahead and make meeting minutes available to do this. I mean, hell, I didn't even know that option wasn't even, you could even not do that in the past.
Yeah, I know that in the past I have been of the opinion that men don't join this organization to go to meetings and hear the minutes read. But I've never advocated doing away with the reading of the minutes. I think education is the primary purpose of meetings. I think that there needs to be an education section in every meeting, but I also think the minutes need to be read. And I think that they need to be read because those minutes are for posterity, and everybody needs to hear them. Everybody needs to listen to them and make sure that they were done correctly, vote upon them appropriately. Because, I can't tell you how many times I've researched minutes from old lodge meetings when I was doing papers or research. And, it's important that they're accurate. And so, yeah, it's boring. Yeah, I don't go just to hear the minutes read, but I think it's an essential part of the meeting.
echo a little bit to a certain extent what Brad said, but I want to say, having been secretary of 2 lodges, the thing that I'd love to do away with reading minutes without a doubt. Okay, it's a pain in the ass to do it, but not only is it I mean, this is historical stuff. You know, the guy that played the part of of King Solomon in the degree last week might be somebody that's going to be famous, and somebody's going to be researching that stuff, and that's going to be important. But more important is the actual business of the lodge. And if we could be sure that the secretary was going to get it right every time, it wouldn't be a problem. The problem is he doesn't get it right every time. I didn't get it right every time, and it's sad. As far as paraphrasing the minutes, yeah, I'd say a combination would be best. You know, put the minutes out there so everybody can actually see the written words, and then have the secretary paraphrase them. I've never written a set of minutes for even the longest meeting we ever had that I couldn't paraphrase in a minute and a half. You know, 2 minutes, and I don't think that's too much to take out of a meeting is gonna make much of a difference. But however, I have seen secretaries that would take a half a page of minutes and take 20 minutes to read the dang things, and that's a bad thing. And I'm not talking about you, Jason, because I've never heard you read minutes. There's been guys that I just hate to do away to where it comes to the point where it becomes everybody knows that we're not going to read the minutes, so it's nobody looks at them anyway, and whatever gets written goes through, and nothing is ever checked. I think that's a dangerous precedent to set. We have the Texas Lodge System of Candidate Information, which is Grand Lodge mandated that it has to be done in a certain way, and half the lodges for 10 years at the officer leadership, we asked the candidates or students if they knew what the Texas Lodge System of Candidate Information was, and nobody knew. That's pretty sad. It's really sad because it's a huge educational piece of their work, and they need it. But I get off the soapbox. I just don't think that from a historical point of view we can just totally disregard what is written in the minutes. And it's not to say that a secretary couldn't be a little irritated about how something went in the lodge and he wrote it the way he wanted to hear it. Maybe not exactly the way it went. And that would be a problem too.
What I wanted to mention is that the way I'm reading this, I see no requirement that it's posted. It's just the worship master may order the secretary to post the minutes, which means lodges that want to do that can, and the ones that don't just won't. Mm-hmm. I think it does fall back though on who's checking. It's the worship master's duty, without a doubt, that those minutes are correct and that they are in order and that they are on property. I mean, everyone in leadership knows that the ultimate responsibility does not lie with the secretary. It lies with that worship master, that those minutes are in order. And if they're not, the worship master is the one that can be prosecuted. So he is the CEO of the lodge, and he should be held accountable as such. That especially is in approval of minutes. Mm-hmm. So I like it. I like that it gives lodges the option to do business as they see fit.
Real quick, I just want to say, yeah, I'm in agreement with that it gives the option, but I want to also say something that I heard. You know, as a secretary, I've been accused of writing minutes that were how I thought was favorable in my opinion. I've been accused of that. And so much so that I had somebody threaten to file charges against me because of that. And I had to get several of the brethren that were there at that meeting of course, the brother making the accusation was not there at that meeting. And he said after the lodge, he said, you know, you made that sound like it was written in your favor. And I made the fact, you know, you weren't there, brother. So, I mean, and then I had to go and get several of the brethren there that were present to do that, and say, no, that's actually what happened. Believe it or not, that is exactly how it happened. Another thing I want to mention too is a lodge should not vote on approving its minutes. That's done by order of the worshipful master. If there are discrepancies in the meeting minutes, then a brother that finds a discrepancy brings it to the attention of the worshipful master, and he orders the secretary to make the correction. And that can be years down the road, but it's never done. It's not done by a vote of the lodge. I know that. So I
Interesting.
just wanted to bring that up.
I would say this, just based off everything I heard. This is definitely not in favor of doing away with keeping up with the minutes, right? And it's also been pointed out, it's totally optional. It's at discretion of the lodge, and it doesn't necessarily have to be at every meeting. But to that same point, I know that there's value in the posterity and keeping the history. And if you post the minutes on the secretary's desk, yes, absolutely, you might have some brothers that don't look at it at all. But you still have people that look at it, and really, it's everybody's responsibility to do so. But by that same token, when the secretary is reading the minutes, I know for a fact there's some people that kind of just zone out, and it's not that they don't care. It's just maybe the reading's going on for a long time, or they already know what's going on. They think there could be any number of reasons. So my point is that there's no way to really force anybody to focus on those minutes and be sure that they're being done as they should be. And so if we leave it to the discretion of the lodge, I think there's value in that. I definitely agree that we should keep good records of the minutes for historical reasons, but I don't know that there's a perfect one-size-fits-all way to really ensure that happens. That's really it. And I'll also echo what Scott said. I didn't know that you couldn't do that before. I've sat in a lodge before in Texas. I won't name the lodge, but I sat in the lodge before in Texas where the minutes were passed among the brother as they sat in lodge before they opened. And then, brother, you have an opportunity to look over the minutes. Are there any changes? And I didn't know you couldn't do that. So I don't know if this is formalizing it and saying you can, or really what the reasoning is for putting it in there. But it's interesting to me.
I think ultimately we have to go back to think about, or just go back to what Craig said, that it is optional, and that's up to, the worshipful master, what he wants to do with his lodge at that time. I would like for it to be a possibility to read the minutes at the end of the lodge meeting and say, okay, is this what we did? While it's fresh on everybody's minds, and say, okay, and then the worshipful master signs off on it and it's done. I've seen it happen that way with other bodies, and it's a miraculous thing. It only takes us 30 minutes to get in and out of that body and get to the restaurant to eat dinner. So, I'm all for it. But then I believe in the sanctity of the integrity of those minutes. And I do agree that if you are going to do it in your lodge, it should be posted at the secretary's desk, because that way you have control. If you make copies for all the different people in your lodge to have those minutes, those minutes are actually by law not supposed to be read by the outside public. So if you have this one copy for them to do, and I would put a poster, one of those, what are they, one of those cork boards up, and just thumbtack it to the cork board about 10 feet away from the secretary's desk, so it doesn't piss him off. But I would post it there, and then let everybody read through it and see what they think about it, and then call it a day. But I believe in the integrity of it. I believe in that historical value. I can't tell you how many times I've tried to do research and just hit a brick wall because it just wasn't there. The data was not there to support the speculation. So I think that they ought to be good, but I think it should be the option of the lodge, because some lodges are more of educational lodges. They don't They don't want to deal with all that. They're going to do the same thing every time. They're going to come in, have a wonderful presentation, and then go home. In some lodges, they go there just to read the minutes.
Yeah. I'll just clarify that the lodge in question, it didn't print copies for everybody. It was one copy that was passed around among the brethren.
That's to protect the integrity of the,
and they ended up back at the secretary's
for.
desk. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it's for.
Resolution number 7. Can someone clarify exactly the intent of resolution 7?
I'll take a stab at it.
Okay.
There you go.
All right.
That's what I was going.
Yeah, I think this one is about some transparency and of the jurisprudence process, and possibly some added clarity to the craft. I think we have all been there at one time or another where we've read a resolution as it's written, and it's a bit vague, but we think we understand it, or we think we understand how it will affect our current laws. And then we get to Grand Lodge, and then we hear jurisprudence come out, and they talk about the cascading effect that it will have. And then you all of a sudden go, wait a minute, this is not what I thought it was. And I think this helps. Pull up that timeline. So maybe it can, that transparency and clarity and what a resolution's effect would be, will be a little bit more transparent before you get to Waco. I mean, you already get the summary. It comes out in the magazine. That's already required. But you don't get to see that summary or those effects until much later. Now, it doesn't mean that they can't talk about different things, but once you get to Waco, that may change your mind. But I think this is it's just a healthy part of the process to give people some upfront information that can be paired with the resolution.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. And the reason why is because you have lawyers that are writing these things up. I would like for everyone to think about this. Who here has not gone to a proposition election for the good state of Texas and read a proposition? What the? They always write it in a reverse manner so that you have to take it apart to completely understand it. Because if you just read through it, you think you're voting one way, but you're actually voting another way. You might think you're voting for it, but you're not. You're voting against the actual proposition. And so I think that same thing happens within our Grand Lodge, because we all love lawyers, but they get a hold of it, and sometimes it's just so convoluted that you really just can't tell what the intent of the law is. So I think that's a very good idea, in my opinion.
We are moving on to number 8. So it would appear from number 8, just to summarize everything, this is the change. This is Article 634. So when suspended for a definite time, when a brother is suspended for a definite period of time and no appeal therefore is taken from the Grand Lodge, he will not be automatically reinstated, and he has to reapply to whatever lodge he wants to go to if he wants to come back in.
To every lodge.
To every lodge he wants to be associated with. And it removes in 635 the section that says, he shall be automatically reinstated to his membership in the lodge and in the Grand Lodge, as the case may be, at the expiration of such time without further action of the lodge or this Grand Lodge.
I'm against it.
You're against?
Me too.
Yeah, that's basically saying that, you can be a Mason, but you can only be a Mason in this lodge that accepts you in. These other lodges that you have plural membered with or whatever, they don't have to let you in.
You haven't understood it correctly, but let me just do a clarification. So back at Article 634, it says he will not be automatically reinstated without action of the lodge or Grand Lodge when the time specified has expired. He shall be required to present his petition in writing to each subordinate lodge he wishes to rejoin at a stated meeting requesting reinstatement. So it's not saying he has to go to every lodge he was a member of and they all have to approve him so that he could be a Mason. It's just saying like if say I was a member of 3 lodges, and once my suspension's over, if I want to continue to be a member of those 3 moving forward, I have to turn in a petition to be accepted back in.
That's bullcrap, in my opinion.
I don't think this applies to NPD. I think this is for disciplinary purposes other than that. But
Okay.
what if you're a member of 1 lodge and this passes and you've served your specific time allotted to your suspension? You've paid your so-called dues, and now you can't rejoin the lodge unless they say that you can. So they're going to be punishing you again for something you've already served a sentence for by not allowing you in. And if they don't allow you in, how do you petition to join another lodge? You can't get a certificate of good standing from your mother lodge. So for me, it's double jeopardy. If you've been given a suspension for a specific amount of time and you've served that time, you should be done with it. You should be back in.
Okay. Brother Williams, what are your thoughts? And then I'll throw a scenario after this.
I have not had any thoughts about this ever being a problem in the 25 years I've been around this organization. It's like anything else, just like Brad said, if you have a suspension of 6 months and you serve that suspension, then it's over. It states in here that would possibly deter a guy who may be committing the same offense again or something like that. It sounds to me like maybe this McKenzie Lodge number 1327 or this past master have an individual who is a problem, and they're trying to solve one individual's problem by changing the whole Grand Lodge law. I mean, that's kind of just the impression that I get. I don't see that there's a problem. If a guy's still got a problem when he serves his suspension and is reinstated, then you file charges on him again, and then probably his punishment is worse. It doesn't make any sense. And then not only does he have to represent his petition, the Worshipful Master's got to appoint an investigation committee, and it's got to go through that whole dang process. Well, that sounds a little ridiculous to me, and maybe I'm missing the point, but just doesn't comprehend.
I was just going to say that I think that this is this gives a lodge that maybe has an issue an out. And maybe the violation that occurred in this scenario, I don't know what this scenario is, but maybe it was a particular lodge that he was, one of the lodges he was affiliated with. And maybe there's a controversy between 2 lodges. One thinks the guy's a good guy and the other one not so good. And I think this is a way to try to, let the guy still participate, but not give the lodge an out, saying, hey, he's already done this lodge wrong. How can he be a member? Whatever that wrong was. I think that the other thing to point out that we really hadn't said all evening is that we all know that these resolutions evolve. And I can see this one evolving on the floor with amendments. Probably, the one that Brother Kahanke pointed out is where does the guy go if he's only a member of 1 lodge? I mean, we got to have an out for him. Can he be just a sojourning Mason and issued a certificate of good standing, something? He's got to have some place to go if he's served his time, because that is only right thing to do.
I agree. And I think it would have to evolve to be successful. Not necessarily to get passed, but to be successful from the implied intent of the resolution. And so I approach this a little bit differently than a lot of the people that have talked about it so far. because I've been involved in some Masonic horror stories, and I'm sure we all have. I'm not saying I'm special, but I think where I'm going with this is I agree with you in that it gives lodges an out, because I have been to lodges where there's been a brother and he creates a lot of drama and a lot of problems. And if there had been suspension for some reason, it doesn't matter if it's a month or 6 months, he'd have to come back to the lodge, and the lodge would say, "Hey, thanks, but no thanks, man. We're good." And something that they couldn't otherwise do. Granted, you still have to have some kind of suspension to have that possibility. But I think, and to be clear, I don't think this is talking about. I agree. I don't think this is talking about MPDs. I think this is talking about because MPDs aren't a definite time. MPDs is just you pay and you're good. This is like it says for a definite time. So I think it'd be like the Grand Master saying, "Hey, 6 months, you're out for whatever reason." But so I don't think it'd qualify like MPDs, because then that'd be a huge nuisance. I can see both sides, and I've said this before, and I'm not trying to play it safe, but I hear both sides, and I can see where you're coming from. It does have some obstacles, like it had been pointed out. What if you're only a member of one lodge? What if that one lodge doesn't want you back? But I also say for a lot of suspensions, there's probably a good and justified reason, and it'd give that lodge an opportunity to say, "Hey, we really don't want someone that is creating ire with the Grand Lodge associated with us, or someone that's really creating drama in our lodge associated with us." And you could say, "Well, that's a Westgate thing, and you should be." Well, it should be, but I mean, no process is perfect. That's my thoughts anyway. All right. So resolution number 9. We've seen this one before. This is its big beefy brother, and it would allow for the possession and consumption of alcoholic beverages on lodge premises. What are y'all's thoughts?
Intoxicating beverages?
I
Oh, clutches pearls.
know. Crazy.
I'd like to submit a toast
I'll drink to
to
that.
all those present. I think the reason why it is so beefy is because they were countering systematically every objection that was brought up, during the last session, and also, anything that could have happened in between. They put it in there to make sure that they had a counter ahead of time, so that it doesn't become a back and forth that people can't see for themselves in a resolution, if that makes sense. Because when you get 100 different people going up to the podium to say, I'm this guy, and hell no, we won't have alcohol, or I'm this guy, hell yes, we will. By time the resolution is finished going through jurisprudence and whatever other committees it has to go through, sometimes it's hard to remember what you're actually voting on. And so I think that this one touches on all of it. So there's no guesswork. We can just get it done.
I'll echo what you said, Dennis. This is definitely a beefed up version of what we saw a few years ago. And should this fail, I'm sure that the author will come with an even more beefed up version based off the objections this year. And so I don't think this is an issue that's really going away anytime soon. I think the case is just going to strengthen itself every year it gets brought back up. I'm in favor of it, me personally, because I think it should we should have the right to choose as grown men if we want to do that in our lodge or not. But as far as the individual decision of a lodge, I could go either way. I'll put it that way. I'm in favor of it because it puts more power into individual lodges. But me personally, if I'm a member of a lodge that doesn't allow it, that's fine. I mean, it's not going to hurt my feelings. But I think we should have the ability to make that decision without this prohibition era law that prevents us from doing anything like that.
So I would say that I have no issues like people drinking in lodge if the law permitted, right? Because the motto of Freemasonry is making good men better, right? So if you have no self-control to have a few drinks and behave yourself like you should do, then you have an issue. You're not learning and you're not using your working tools as you're supposed to. So what's the whole point? Like it's like having a kid and have a candy to give it to him, but no, I have it unlocked. I have it under a lock, you cannot reach it.
Mhm.
But if you put it in the table and the kids know he cannot touch it, then the kid learning he learned the lesson. He cannot touch it. That's what I say. Yeah, you should have the right to make your own decisions, and if you cannot prove you have control, then you're not learning nothing. That's what I'm trying to say. Thank you.
Like it. Like it. Thank
Then
for
you
the
have your
thoughts.
brothers around you to whisper good counsel.
Yeah.
This actually, I agree with it, but this actually opens up a revenue factor where lodges can actually rent out their common areas with like a rental agreement with alcoholic beverages.
Yeah, I don't know about so I'm not I
I
can't speak on
was
that because I'm
thinking,
not familiar with
I
that.
was thinking that was already allowed if it's under a true lease agreement with a different entity. It's not allowed in lodge unless it's with small amounts for a certain degree that we all know about. But
Uh-huh.
otherwise, I think it is allowable if you're renting it to somebody, to some
Well,
external entity.
Because the way I read it, the way I understood it was that it wasn't allowed on the property, on the premises itself. So that's where I understood it.
Right. It says on the premise unless it's under lease. But now I may be wrong, but I do think there is a clause that it can't be a room attached to the lodge. It has to be a separate area to be able to do it, to rent it out to somebody else. I don't know. I'm no expert on that, but I wholeheartedly agree with this resolution. I think that it's been way too long, and if I want to throw a Masonic event at my lodge, if I want to throw a big dinner party or festive board or something like that, I can't do it at my lodge right now, which costs me even more money or inconvenience because I have to go and beg the shrine to let me use their building or beg the Scottish Rite to let me use their building because I can't have a festive board in my own building. That to me, that's just ridiculous that we don't have that option. And I support this wholeheartedly.
I'll share real quick how this takes place in other grand jurisdiction. Nevada, for example, I went to a lodge meeting and one of the brothers leans over to me in a meeting. He goes, "Hey, you want to get a beer after this?" And I said, "Sure, where?" And he goes, "The next room." And I look over at him and I said, "You can do that here?" And he says, "Yeah." So we go in the next room after the meeting, and of course, one of the past Grand Masters is there, and we go in there, and there's about maybe about 20, 25 of us in there. Junior Warden does a head count and goes, "Okay, each of you get 2," hands them out, and then that's it. Nobody else gets any others. That's it.
I like that.
So that's how it's done. There at least. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
All right, number 10, the short and sweet of this one, if I'm summarizing it, it basically reads to me, if Masonic charges are filed against someone after they have declared their availability for a Grand Lodge office, then that trial must take place at the next grand session. It cannot be prolonged after. Is that how it reads to everybody else?
Yep.
Okay.
Which means
I can't imagine why this came up.
Yeah, exactly.
Any thoughts?
I also think it has to do with jurisdiction too. It takes it, from what I understand, discipline member, exclusive original jurisdiction, it adds number 4, disciplined members who have made themselves available for an elected grand lodge. So in other words, it takes it from the local lodge jurisdiction to the grand lodge if they have made themselves available. So it's yes, it has to do with the trial, has to be at the annual communication, but also that the jurisdiction moves from the local to the grand. I think if I'm reading that correctly. All right.
If they hold it at if there's a local lodge trial, can they close it off to people?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It is a private affair.
Interesting. Okay.
But
Any
what's
thoughts on-
crazy about this though is that every disciplinary action goes through Grand Lodge because we no longer have enough membership to hold the trials and whatnot in our own lodges. So it all gets referred to Grand Lodge to handle. It goes through mediation with Grand Lodge. It does everything else with Grand Lodge, except the trial is done in a secluded little lodge that's going to affect a brother's entire Freemasonry. If we don't have a standard that disallows this from happening, then any given election, politicking is taking place if somebody gets charges filed against them and they've made themselves available. That's plain and simple.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous. Go ahead, Craig. You'll probably say it.
Probably not, but probably won't say much better. But yeah, I think this is another easy one. It's in the forefront of everyone's mind because of everything that's going on. But number one, we should, the election of officers should never be politicized with charges, utilizing charges. We should never do that. But for whatever reason, just in case they coincide, then we should expediently deal with those charges. And so if there is someone that has done something that charges need to be filed upon them and they are about to be elected, we should deal with those charges in an expedited manner prior to election. I mean, we would not want to put ourselves in a conundrum where someone did something wrong and then we elect them and they're serving out a term all while we know that something's going on. But on the other side, this does give hope on something that if someone does misuse charges, then we all know that it can be dealt with and dismissed and moved on. And so I think this is actually great for either side of those events.
Well, fortunately, we're all Masons, and we know that no one would ever misuse charges for any reason. So that's Bradley, do you have something to say?
Yeah, I don't think this goes far enough because I am personally aware of at least 2 times where past Grand Masters have filed charges against individuals because they did not agree with the idea of them being appointed as district deputy Grand Masters. And they couldn't be installed while they were laboring under charges. And as soon as the installation was complete and someone else was in the position, the charges were dropped, and it's bull.
So would that apply to DDGMs? Is that considered?
That's why I don't think it goes far enough.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, I could agree with that 100%. I didn't know that happened.
Yeah, it should apply to any Grand Lodge position.
Remember that dumpster fire we talked about?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Any other thoughts on this? I think it's a move in the right direction. It may not be as far as it should be. I agree with Bradley, but it's definitely moving in the right direction.
Agreed.
Okay. Someone's going to have to clarify for this one because I've looked. I'm not sure what the intent is of number 11. So let's talk about the lodge paraphernalia, and it changes Article 127, and it makes a change that no ritual other than that by this Grand Lodge shall be taught or used in this jurisdiction, nor shall less paraphernalia. It strikes out except as and puts in than that listed in Article 223 shall be used. what's it going? Where's it going with this?
So 223 gives a list that is the minimum requirement for lodges. And 127 says only that listed in 223 shall be used. So they contradict each other. I think this is just trying to clarify that.
I see.
Along with what Brad just said, that's a good point to consider right there. What I think they also might be getting at is Article 223 states all the necessary paraphernalia that must be used during a degree or a lodge. Now, there are some. Let me go back a little bit. 223 states what must be used for a degree or open lodge, so on and so forth. I think what this is reiterating that all of those items that are listed in 223 must be used.
I see.
Such as, like, in the certain part of a fellowcraft degree that a lot of lodges don't use.
Mhm.
Okay. Also, when a lecture is being given, slides, those must be used. Either slides in digital form or PowerPoint presentation or film. A lot of lodges don't use those.
Mhm.
That's considered necessary paraphernalia.
I see.
And a lot of lodges don't use them. I think, and I could be wrong, but I think this states this is a reiteration that all those things shall be used. And because the only place that I'm hearing that all those things must be used is at a forum and exam. And most notably, it was Right Worshipful Rumsey that would make sure to bring that up, like your lodge room layout, your certain parts of the degree. These things shall be used. Does this lodge have this? And if they say no, then he would bring up Article 223 states you must use those.
Mm.
So I think that's probably what they were getting at too.
I could see that.
So I think the other thing that they're trying to get at is, so if you read, it says, whereas by limiting the permissible paraphernalia to only that listed on Article 223,
That's what I was going to bring up.
not an exhaustive and not an exhaustive list of all permissible paraphernalia. So I think what they're getting at is basically if they want to use additional things. Probably the most recent example is the use of music during a degree. So if you kind of read that, you would say by saying that this is the minimum, but not saying that this is the only thing that you can use, that they're wanting to add their own things to the degree to add, maybe enhance it, or add, like I said, add music to it, which I know is a big deal, and stuff like that. So I think that might also be part of what they're getting at with this.
So what's interesting to me about this is, and based on what you're saying, and others have said, wasn't 223 changed not too long ago? Or am I thinking about a different article? And it was kind of a reaction to lodges that were implementing a certain type of chamber in their lodge. And the list is like, hey, you can't have anything but this. And so if we're going with this and saying, no, this is a minimum requirement, is it kind of flying in the face of that change, or am I totally off the mark on this?
No, I think you're absolutely right.
Just to go on what you were asking, Justin, that I believe was in 2013, and it was Walt Rogers at the time was Grand Master, and he stated that no other, how did he say, is like something to the effect of nothing in the candidate preparation room, nothing else can be used other than what's depicted in the monitor for that particular part.
Okay. So it doesn't really conflict then.
Yeah.
All right.
We were told we have a trestle board on a easel in the east in Goliad, and I can't remember if it was last time Grand Lodge. No, it wasn't last time because I wasn't there. The 3 years ago, before Brad came down, it was in Ken's year. We had that easel of a trestle board in the east, and somebody saw it and said, "Oh no, you can't have that. You can't have that there in the east." It's like, wait a minute, this is Masonic. This is symbolism. This is, this, all it does is enhance the questions in your mind when you look at it. And so we had this big argument about that. Finally, somebody said that we could have it. I can't remember who said it. I think it might have been Grandmaster. I think it might have been Ken told us don't worry about it. But I think that's what this law refers to, is stuff like that. Or if you want to burn incense to make your lodge smell better than musty old socks and underwear, I think that's the benefit of something like this, and is being able to do those small things that don't change the ritual, but it enhances it.
What do you guys do at Goliad that makes it smell like underwear?
We got rid of that carpet.
Okay. Are there any other thoughts on this? No? Okay.
Oh, Brad's obviously got a thought on it. He's just not saying it. He's going to tell me later.
Resolution number 12. This resolution is easy to summarize because it deletes in its entirety Article 339. And Article 339 was the list of, basically it said, lodge shall not sponsor other organizations. And it told us what we could sponsor. So I'm curious, what is the definition of sponsoring? Like, what does it actually mean when
they're talking about sponsoring Little League or Boy Scouts or, different troops, stuff like that.
Yeah, providing money, having your name associated with them, either on their jerseys or on their signage or whatever, or maybe even utilizing your facility.
Interesting. Well, that's good to know. All right. Any thoughts on that then? I'll just leave it at this because it says right here, whereas subordinate lodges should be able to make their own decisions regarding what organizations they support. That's my thought. I agree. We're grown men. It goes back to what I said earlier. We should be able to make grown men decisions.
I think if they want to expand the list of approved organizations that we can sponsor, they should be specific and write a resolution that includes those organizations, because if we leave it open-ended, then you're going to have lodges that are predominantly made up of a particular denomination sponsoring church youth groups. And that makes it look like we're favoring one religion over another. And I have an issue with that.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I mean, I don't have a problem with the spirit of what they're trying to accomplish. I just think it needs to be worded differently.
I think Brad's correct. It's the spirit of it that everybody embraces. Maybe it wasn't written out the way it should.
I think
where it can be most effective.
I think anytime anyone sees an entire article getting deleted, the reaction is, let's do it. I mean, that's my reaction. Let's do it. Okay. Looking at resolution number 13. So whereas the lab counselor is not always knowledgeable and the administrator of the lodge, whereas many lodges are not requiring their incoming officers to actually complete the lab program, whereas valuable information in OLT is not being shared within the lodge, whereas some lodges have financial problems and need the officers training, which teaches finance. whereas they've closed because they haven't done this, there would be additional qualifications. So prior to his installation as worship master or warden, a brother shall in all circumstances be qualified as follows. So it changes in section 2 of Article 276A. Looks like it adds this counselor, so we're talking about the life counselor, shall be required to have, prior to his appointment, attended the Grand Lodge of Texas OLT program. Me personally, sure. I mean, yeah, he probably should go. I don't think that's going to fix the problems that are being laid out with all the whereases. Me personally, I'd rather see it be a requirement to be installed in an office, go to OLT, because I think OLT is that valuable. And I think in any kind of profession, and I do consider Freemasonry a profession, it just pays different kind of salary than a typical job. But we all have ongoing training. We all have continuing education, and I agree. The lodges that are expecting more out of its members and its officers are being more successful than those that don't. But that's just my thought.
I have to say, where in everyone that watches this show knows how much I love education. I don't always absorb it all, but I love it. But I have to disagree. And the reason why, officer leadership training, it's taken on a new life lately. And I'm going to say this carefully so that I don't, find myself on the blunt end of a rod. But officer leadership training has increased its fees, and in some cases has lessened its value, and it has turned into a monetary gain situation from the way it used to be. And you can ask Brad and Chris back when y'all were in the committee. Just hear me out. I'm not throwing you under the bus. Back when y'all
sounds like you're going under the bus.
Okay. Back when y'all were members of the committee, the goal was to break even, right? You just wanted to get the lodges educated so that they could do better within our fraternity, so they could manage their finances properly. They could manage their Freemasonry better. That was the goal, right? Well, last year there was quite a bit of money that was made due to some changes in the officer leadership program. And so it has shifted from a break-even thought to a for-profit kind of a culture. And I don't want to require anybody to go to officer leadership training under those circumstances. If it were circumstances like in the past where it was a break-even situation that we really just want you educated, that's our goal, then I'd be all for it. But we're not in that culture right now, and I can't support that being in this culture.
Okay. All right. Brother Enderly, what are your thoughts?
I think that Brother Williams from Bowie, he must be if he wrote this himself, he's very intelligent, because he made sure that he put it right before that last clause, which will wind over the Grand West time and time again, which is that that anyone who is a past master is exempt, right, from this.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And so politically, it's written very intelligently. So most I don't know about you guys, but for my lodges, all the lodges I'm a member of, the counselor is a past master. So I don't know how much of a change this will be across the state. Really, I think that this is like having if you have a counselor who you appoint and he is not qualified for the job, you're just setting yourself up for failure. So regardless of whether he's went to leadership class, or leadership training before, or whether he just went in the summer, if he's not the qualified person to do the job, you shouldn't put him there anyways.
Agreed.
And really and truly, just because he attended the class doesn't make him qualified. We all know that. So personal responsibility with the worship master is where I think it's the most important.
I agree with what Brother Craig said. How many of you have ever have taken both the officer leadership and the life program? Has anybody here taken both? Okay. Then if you've taken both, you know pretty much that the life program and the officer leadership are not the same thing.
No.
I mean, there's some similarities, but they're not the same thing. At least they weren't when the 10 years that I was on the committee. I don't think that having the lodge counselor having to have gone to the officer leadership is a necessary hard and fast requirement. I know that every lodge counselor I've ever talked to generally is a past master, like Brother Craig said. And I think that's kind of important because, you know, the old saying is you don't really figure out how to be a master until you're not one anymore. And the life,
that's right.
That life program is really, I think, better administered by a past master without a doubt. And I don't see a problem with what he's putting in there. I don't see the reason for it, but I have a big red flag when it comes to Brother Jerry O. Williams because of a resolution he brought forth several years ago. So I start looking at that red flag and wondering what the heck is going on. But
Tell us what you really think, Brother Williams.
You know.
Yeah, I'll just say, like, I'm not in favor of it either. And it's not because of the OLT requirements. I think OLT has value even if it's not break even. I think the value is still there and lodges still benefit from it. And I think not supporting it will just end up with it going away altogether, not necessarily with a reduction of cost. But that's just my thoughts. But I don't really see the relationship between OLT and the life program. I don't know how going to OLT makes you a better implementer of the life program. I think any information, any knowledge you have is only as useful as the implementation. And just because you go to OLT doesn't mean you're going to be a great life instructor either. And I also agree it falls back on whoever appoints the life program instructor. You can have someone that is a great life program instructor that has never gone to OLT, and you can have someone that's gone to all of the OLT classes and can't do life program. So I just don't see the relationship, and I don't see the need for the requirement. And so altogether, I mean, if it's not necessary, why add it to the book? We're trying to take things out of it, right? We're trying to reduce that ultimately. So I just don't see the value in that. Okay, number 14. This one will make it so that if you have received the golden trowel, you have an apron you can wear. So that's not the best response, Dennis. That's not how you should start off with this. Okay.
So a lapel pin isn't enough. Now we gotta have an apron too.
So whereas the only way to identify a brother who has received this most distinguished award is a lapel pin about the size of a quarter that you'd have to be a few feet within, and so it's not big enough lapel pin, Brother Quinn.
We have to show off our humility. Come on, guys. Yeah. We don't have enough feathers. We got to show off our humility.
You need a big apron that says, "I am extraordinarily humble," so people know it.
Can we make an amendment to that resolution?
Yeah, let's just skip this one. This is ridiculous.
Yeah. Make an amendment to put little red flashy lights all around it too.
Yeah, like Christmas lights or something.
And that you have to be introduced like a dignitary at lodge every week.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Craig?
Oh, I'm sorry, Craig. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I'm just going to say y'all are really just jealous because I have a parking spot at lodge. That's what it is. And so I was thinking maybe an apron that goes with my parking spot. That's perfect.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
Well, if that's not enough, then you ought to have the past Golden Trowel winner designation and a right worshipful designation.
I 100% agree. Yeah.
And
maybe a chauffeur
your arrival
would be good.
Let's just hope they don't ask for a billboard.
Baby steps, one thing at a time.
I think that one's going to get withdrawn before it even hits the floor. Tell you the
I
truth.
hope so. I hope so.
Yeah, I think Brad is onto something. We ought to at least, if you can't have trumpeters, in front of you, we should at least have a phone so that we can do procession as Golden Trowel recipients into the lodge. Absolutely.
Number 15. So this is talking about the endowed memberships of brothers that are in demised lodges. And so it looks as though, if I'm reading it correctly, it's going to change Article 318.9. It's going to amend it so that these endowed memberships of these demised lodges and the endowments that are made in honor of deceased brothers there, they'll be moved within 1 year to the nearest lodge in that district. Yeah. What do
They've
y'all
tried
thought?
this before. It never passes.
I'm actually planning on writing up a different resolution. I hope this does not pass. I would like to do a resolution to where you can just simply move your endowment to the lodge that you want to. If you have an endowment somewhere, whether it's demised or not, then you should be allowed to move that endowment wherever you want to support the lodge that you want to support. I don't think it should be, allowed every 6 months or maybe every year or something for those people who are just jumping from, place to place.
Mhm.
But I think that if someone decides they want to demit from a lodge and go to a different lodge, they should be able to move their endowment somewhere else. Now, not that new lodge would have to support it or accept it as, that minimum $500 endowment that you paid for it. If their endowments are like $2,000, then yeah, you have to charge up to get to it, to get to their endowment level. But I think that we should be able to move it wherever we want to, because all it is basically is a line item in a chart of accounts with Grand Lodge, and it takes one simple form to move that line item from one lodge to another lodge. I don't think that this is the way to move endowments. I think that I think they should just be able to be moved by the member that has that endowment.
Yeah, I'm not really. I don't like how it automatically goes to the closest one.
No,
Brother
me neither.
Brother Enderley, what do you have? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So the way I'm reading this is that the lodge has already went through the process where they have decided that they're going to demise. So they've had an opportunity to merge with whatever lodge they wanted to merge with.
Mm-hmm.
And so once that process is of demise has begun, all the living Masons who are a member of that demise lodge have a year to go find a home wherever they want.
Right.
And they can move their endowment to that lodge. That is the only condition that right now, the way the law is written, that you can move an endowment is if your lodge demises.
Mm-hmm.
And so what this does is all the honorum in memorial endowments and all of the deceased brothers' endowments all go to the Grand Lodge of Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just banked against the Grand Lodge of Texas. They're not assigned to a lodge anymore. And so that's always the selling point when people are saying, hey, you should really merge with a local lodge. So that way that way you keep the Masonic money local.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is another way to fix that, because there are just some lodges that, because of local feuds, they can never agree to merge, even though one is in such dire straits that they demise themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm sure that the Grand Lodge of Texas, that officers will tell you that the money that from those endowments is not needed there. It's needed at a local lodge level.
Yeah.
And so is this a perfect way to do it? No, but I think it will open up maybe a conversation for revision
Mm-hmm.
on how or where those endowments can go.
And I'd like to clear up just some confusion on my end as I was reading it. So this would only apply, like you said, to deceased Masons, 50-year Masons, basically brothers that are already not paying per capita. So the returns are. This is not going to be weighed against per capita for the returns of these members. It's just going to be whatever the returns are. So it wouldn't be it would be extra money for that lodge if it did do that.
My problem with that though is that if the brother didn't purchase the endowment for that other lodge, he didn't want to be a member of that other lodge. So sending his endowment to a lodge that he may not have supported or wanted to support is not the answer. I'm sorry. I mean, just devil's advocate, because, there's brothers that have very, very serious feelings about certain lodges. And if their endowment in their name went to that other lodge, then they might be rolling in their grave, and that's not fair of us to make that decision for them.
We are moving on to, I believe this is actually the last one.
Oh my gosh.
Am I skipping one? No. So number 16. This one, and I know Dennis and I have had some discussions, so I know he has an opinion on it. This one would change
The world knows I have an opinion.
Article 393 as far as qualification for candidates of Masonry. And what it would add is, furthermore, if a candidate has been finally convicted of a felony offense as defined in Article 509, he shall be disqualified to receive the degrees. And so at first glance, I think this looks almost as though it's going back to the original stance that we used to have on felons.
I am super qualifier, not a lawyer. Do not practice law. I have an engineering background. I work in oil and gas. Okay, so but here's my thing with felonies. Right, I know that there is simple list of felonies that people commit that they could get convicted of, which I don't think is necessarily necessarily something that we should exclude somebody from Masonry from. Everyone knows that federal wiretapping or federal wire fraud is a felony. You could get that. There are cases that I have read where people have gotten a felony as a result of messing with someone else's Facebook page. So do we think that that is a qualifier? While I think that's not a good idea, and I don't want anybody messing with my Facebook page, I don't think that would be an excluding item in my mind, especially if they did it at a younger age and they didn't really understand the consequences of that, right? Federal tax evasion is one. Let's say that you are in the food industry and you're a waiter and you fail to report all of your tips and you get caught at it. That's a felony. Again, I think everyone should pay their due on taxes, but I don't think that's I don't think that should exclude you from Masonry. Vandalism of federal property is a felony. So if you egg a post office box, or if you hit with a baseball bat a couple of mailboxes, or one mailbox for that matter, that is that's a felony as well. And so, tampering with the mail, you open, say your roommate's mail while you're in college. or something like that. Your roommate, because you share an apartment, you open theirs and it gets blown out of proportion somehow. Boom, that's a felony. I think these are all things that, yes, we do need to know that you had a felony, and yes, I do think you need to explain it to a committee on what you've done. But I don't think these things can exclude you from Freemasonry. So I could keep going, but I don't want to. So
Thank you for sharing. Brother
Very
Kohenke,
good.
what are your thoughts?
I agree with Craig. I mean, we've beaten this horse to death. Why do we have to keep
yes,
going back and forth on this felony thing? I mean, we
So-
tried going back to the felony. We went away from the felony. We went back to the felony. We went away from the felony. Now we want to go back to it again. It's ridiculous. I mean, we left it the last time with each lodge being able to decide for itself based on the information provided whether or not they were going to allow somebody to join their lodge. And I am totally in agreement with that. And like Craig was saying, if you're 18 and your girlfriend's 17 and you're still a senior in high school and you guys have sex, that's statutory rape. And if her parents decide to file charges, that's a felony. Are you really going to exclude somebody from being a Mason when they're 40 because they had sex when they were 18 with their 17-year-old girlfriend? I mean, just let it be the way that it is now and be done with it. I'm tired of having to vote on it every other year.
All right. So not to beat this dead horse, but I'm in agreement as well. I mean, in my younger years, my senior year in high school, we did a senior prank, and I happened to be 18, and there obviously were a lot of us that were 18 at the time. Well, I was at a Department of Defense school, and there was talk of federal trespassing charges that they had bantied around. And so, when I'm 18, all of a sudden, I could have been charged with, trespassing on federal property and charged with a felony and all this kind of stuff. Fortunately, cooler heads prevailed, but, it's one of those. We had a couple of guys a few years ago that petitioned our Elks Lodge that in their younger years, they had gotten a DUI. Yeah. And but they were now 20 years later, and these guys had started a VegStrong, a charity that brought furniture to homeless veterans moving into homes. And these were absolute stand-up guys, but in their younger years had made mistakes. So they, first of all, they disclosed it on their application like they should have. And then they submitted I don't know, an essay or something to be read in the lodge to explain what it was that they had been convicted for and how they had, moved on and stuff like that. So, if they want to add, kind of a line in the sand, I mean, right now, obviously it says anything related to pedophilia, which I think is, obviously to me, that would be a red line in the sand. Then maybe there's some more other heinous crimes like, first degree premeditated murder. Well, if you get convicted of that, well, maybe you shouldn't be a Freemason or something like that. If they want to add something like that, but to just say felony, there's laws in Germany that you can get a felony for driving the wrong way. Like, I don't really think we. So anyway, so just long answer to say, yeah, I agree with what the other two guys said.
Thank you for your thoughts. Any more thoughts on this one?
yeah, I got one last write up. I know, I get where they're coming from. I know what this is about because we've heard this spill 100 times, and that's about again, I'm not a police officer, or anything like that, but there's something that with active police officers in which they're not supposed to be hanging out with felons. And I and I understand that they have that as part of their requirement. I don't know what the right way to satisfy that is, but I just don't see us satisfying it in this way. That requirement, I think that is a personal requirement that they need to satisfy. I don't think we can legislate it. Maybe those guys, when we have a meal, maybe they know those people are felons in some way. They just know it, and they don't dine with them, and afterwards they don't go out with those guys, just like you would choose who you hang out with in any other manner. So, yeah, I understand what the problem is, because it is the same group of people who keep bringing it up. So, but legislation's not the right.
Are there any final thoughts that anyone would like to share? Maybe revisit something, or just in general?
I just want to say I'm glad there's no Grandmaster's decisions that we have to go over to make this podcast any longer. I'm tired.
Nice.
Well, we definitely appreciate you taking time out to be on here. Anyone else have any thoughts? Really? Okay.
I'd like to. Well, since nobody else has any thoughts, I'll have a thought.
Okay.
I just want to thank you all for coming on tonight. It was a little bit different than what we had envisioned for this discussion, but it turned out to be really great. And you actually opened my eyes to some thoughts that I didn't have prior. And so I appreciate that, because I always tell people to challenge me, because I want to change my mind if it's for the betterment of Freemasonry. Mm-hmm. And I think that some of y'all had some very valid points that I was not considering prior, and now I am definitely considering. I'd also like to thank Craig for helping us to understand, the transformation of the security in Grand Lodge, and how we know that our votes are going to be secure at the end of the day. I'm disappointed that the team that developed this protection on our behalf is no longer in the works with that protection. They're no longer part of that security team, but I certainly understand why, and I'm glad that I have that understanding now, because I really didn't prior, and I was really pissed. But knowing that it was y'all's choice, I get it, and I'm sure all the listeners will appreciate that thought as well. Otherwise, I wanted to let everybody know that on top of this, we have invited all the people that have made themselves available for Grand Junior Warden and Grand Secretary. We have invited all of them to have a show with us very similar to this, and we had some brothers accept, and so we will have a show on the 6th with our people that are made available. We did not include the Committee on Work members or any of the other positions, because some of them were uncontested, and frankly, we don't need to discuss the Committee on Work. They have their own qualifiers, and so they have to make those decisions on who they put forward, I guess. Mm-hmm. But thank you all so much for coming on, and I feel very fortunate that I call you all brothers and friends, and especially friends, because we have our brothers out there, but they're not all friends sometimes. And so I'm very grateful to have all of you as friends and brothers. And I can't wait to see y'all and have a toast with you in January for sure.
Absolutely. And my final thought, I'll just restate what I said before we started this whole discussion. The opinions that we shared are strictly our own, and that they don't reflect our lodges or our Grand Lodge or anything like that. By no means politicking or anything under that definition. It's just us sharing our thoughts and using this opportunity to clarify and learn from one another. And so, like Dennis said, I learned a lot that I didn't know. It opened my perspective to things I hadn't considered before. And there is value in that. And so I appreciate everyone taking their time out of their evening, especially I know it's 10:30 here right now in the evening.
January, Masonic Improvement is going to have a dinner for its inner circle members. We're doing it at a nice restaurant. It's called Diamondbacks. We've secured a room to where we can go in there and discuss Freemasonry at will and enjoy libations and delicious food. So all of our inner circle members are welcome to join us, along with I'll be sending out some invitations to some friends and brothers that I hold dear to my heart, and anyone who has been a speaker or a guest on our show is also welcome. And so I wanted to extend that out. That's going to be the Thursday of Grand Lodge, the Grand Annual Communication, and Thursday evening. So if that sounds like something that you would enjoy, a nice piece of steak, nice conversation, and challenging thoughts, then I hope you join us. And like I said, that's for inner circle members and a few other guests that we will send invitations to.
Dennis, is there going to be an education presentation?
There sure will. You know it. Oh, I guess you just volunteered for it. Yeah, I'm just messing with you. Yes, there certainly will.
Are we still looking for someone to give that?
Yes, we are.
Down? Okay.
Craig volunteered. I heard him.
I was thinking about that.
I'll take care of it if you want me to.
Nice.
Oh, nice. Cover that.
Well, then I say that it's a done deal. Start sharpening your pencil and let's have a good talk. It'll be a good one, I'm sure.
Yeah. Awesome. It's all coming together. All right. With that said, thank y'all, everybody, again for coming on this evening, and we'll see y'all the next time we meet up.
Thank you.
Keep it between
Thanks,
the points.
guys.